Starting
MARGDHARSHAN. Panun Kashmir resolution adopted by the House. MARGDHARSHAN 91. Organized by Panun Kashmir on 28/12 December 2018 at Jammu, J&K, India. The resolution. The terrorist violence that has ravaged the state of Jammu and Kashmir for the last 4 years, and the culmination of the long secessionist movement carried on by the fundamentalist forces in Kashmir since 1947 and overtly and covertly supported by Pakistan. Terrorism in Kashmir is a Muslim religious crusade aimed at the secession of the state from the Republic of India and its merger with Pakistan. It's founded on an ideological struggle of which the main tenets are that Kashmir has a Muslim majority population should become part of Pakistan on the basis of religion, that all institutions which stand for secularism and democracy are destroyed, and all individuals or groups that vouch for equality, justice and religious tolerance are eliminated, that the rich cultural traditions of Kashmir, hallowed over more than 5,000 years of the history, be demolished and replaced by Islamic fundamentalism. You must answer one question. It's the 4 years mentioned can be 91 smas. Kusha ide 4 years cash.
Starting from
86. So the reference is in 1986. Pakistan is deeply involved in its attempts to subvert the constitutional and administrative machinery of the state of Jammu and Kashmir in order to strain and snap the relations between the state and the Republic of India. Its abatement in the terrorist violence by lending moral, political, military support is common knowledge. The terrorists operative in Jammu and Kashmir are being trained in camps raised for this purpose in Pak al-Kashmir and neighboring states of Pakistan, and then pushed into India to cause large-scale anarchy, destruction, arson, murder, molestation and rape. The Kashmiri Hindus have become the first victims of terrorism, as a result of which they had to flee the place of their abode. The Hindus of Kashmir have, right from the dawn of freedom, faced and fought communalism and fundamentalism. They are part of Vedic heartland of India and have lived in Kashmir from times immemorial. In fact, they are the original inhabitants of Valley of Kashmir. Now reduced to an ethnic minority with a history of more than 5,000 years, dating back beyond the Nilmat era. Almost contemporary to the Vedic civilization of India, the Hindu religious precepts have borne the message of universal peace, brotherhood and coexistence of all creeds and faiths. The Hindus of Kashmir are the progenitors of Shakti and Shaivite monism and Hinyan and Sarvastivadin Buddhism, which spread to Central Asia, Tibet and Western China. They propounded the great Shaivite doctrine of Tirtha and the theory of recognition. Kalhana, Jona Raja, Prajbhat, Shukha and Shivara, the great masters of history, compiled the historic chronicle of Rajtarangi. The Hindu kingdom of Kashmir reached its zenith with the ascendance of Karkotas when Kashmir commanded respect and tribute from its neighboring kingdoms till the fall of Utpalas. The ascendancy of Muslim sultans in the 13th century witnessed fierce religious persecution and attempts at conversion of Kashmiri Pandits who resisted it with will and determination and preferring death to surrender. The Kashmiri Pandits have played a major role in the liberation struggle against the British and the colonial imperatives in the state. The secularization of the various communal movements which rocked the state in the aftermath of the growth of Muslim separatism in India was achieved mainly due to the efforts of Kashmiri Pandits. The sentence is a little bit probably everybody can watch wherever they feel there is some kind of doubt. The secularization of various communal movements which rocked the state in the aftermath of the growth of Muslim separatism in India was achieved, mainly due to efforts of Kashmiri Pandits. Probably we'll keep it as a question mark.
I think you can
So this is one question mark which everybody can put here. They authored and sponsored the famous, underline it. They authored and sponsored the famous Declaration of National Demand in 1938, which later became secular national movement in the state. The political movement for national self-government received its ideological content from the Kashmiri Pandits, who gave the first call for self-government. The question marks were important because this has been asked in many forums where you are self-contradicting yourself here. Because of discussion. Since the independence of India and accession of Kashmir to the Indian Union, the Kashmiri Hindus have continued to fight the religious precedents as well as the separatism, which accompanied the rise of Muslim communalism. They were reduced to plight of slavery, misery and servitude, but they did not react against Muslim communalism as a communal minority. In spite of the forces arranged against them vis-a-vis Muslim fundamentalism, the Muslimized state apparatus and the secessionist group, the Hindus suffered at the stake to save the secular and democratic image of Kashmir in India. While resisting the orchestrated moves fostered by the Muslim communalists inside the state and their mentors in Pakistan to Islamize the state and snatch it from the Union of India, the Hindus became the victims of communal hatred and faced hostility, ridicule and privation. The Indian leaders, on the other hand, served their petty national personal interests and party objectives, leaving the field open for the fundamentalists to carry out their nefarious designs. The Kashmiri Hindu was the main obstacle in the attainment of the goal of fundamentalism and became the victim of communal hatred and faced hostility, ridicule. Ridicule was branded victims of communal hatred and faced the hostility, ridicule was branded. I will again read the sentence back from the Kashmiri Hindu was the main obstacle in the attainment of goal of fundamentalists and became the victims of communal hatred and faced hostility, ridicule, was branded as agent of government of India.
Comma is comma.
Is a type of mistake here. So probably will again have to underline it. And probably just note it down because see these things are come to scam for big people these days. Just put a comma here. We might have to put a revision version of this. Even as the leader of the stature of Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah charged them acting as the fifth column of India. Very, very important. Fifth column of India. Kya usme matlab hai this मालूम कर. Each are question तो probably can mark it down when we debate. We'll talk about it. They thus became the victims of dangerous irony, where on the one hand they were persecuted because of their adherence to the values of secularism and democracy, enshrined in the Indian Constitution. On the other hand, the rulers of India jettisoned them. The Hindus of Kashmir, because of their minority and almost negligible representation in the state legislature and bureaucracy, became helpless onlookers to the maneuvering, manipulation and distortion of the established democratic, constitutional and legal institutions of the state, which gave rise to Muslim majoritarianism. Under this system, Kashmiri Hindu faced a deliberate, steady and relentless squeeze of their constitutional, political, legal rights and was forced into a slow exodus. In the process, nearly 3 lakh Hindus have already left the valley during the last 4 decades. Muslim majoritarianism is inherently communal in nature. The Indian partition was not an accident of history, nor was it contrived by the British to contain the Indian freedom movement. It was the culmination of the Muslim struggle for separate Muslim majority state, where the preeminence of Muslim Ummah was recognized. During the last 40 years of the history of Pakistan, the Hindus who constituted nearly 30% of its population at the outset are reduced to only 1% as on today. Today as in 1990. The operative design of Muslim communalism in Kashmir has almost been similar. The Hindus of Kashmir who formed about 9% of the population of Kashmir in 1947 are almost wiped out of Kashmir Valley by now. As a part of grand strategy for the attainment of Islamic and fundamentalist state of Kashmir, communal elements, terrorists, are bent upon annihilating the Kashmiri Hindus, as a result of which their exodus has been made inevitable. The terrorist violence has taken a heavy toll of unarmed, peace-loving and tolerant Hindus of Kashmir Valley. Hundreds of Hindu men, women and children were brutally murdered and hundreds were subjected to inhuman torture and suffering. The community was driven out of Kashmir Valley by force or on the pain of death. The properties left behind by them have been looted and their houses burnt or destroyed by dynamite. This was our question, probably we'll just put it as a question mark again here, dynamite is path. Right at present, a scorched earth policy is being followed by terrorists by systematically burning the Hindu localities, Hindu houses and Hindu shrines and temples. The Kashmir history is replete with the contribution of Kashmiri Hindus to the nation's march in general and that of Kashmir in particular. Kashmiri Hindus have served as a beacon light to the entire national polity and are the real founders of secularism and democracy in Kashmir. In the modernization of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the Hindus have contributed much more than their share and have imparted to Kashmiri society scientific, progressive and humane outlook. Throughout their history, more especially in the modern times, they have tried their utmost to live at peace with their Muslim compatriots. The secular facade which Kashmir has worn all through the last 40 years has been provided mainly by Kashmiri Hindus. They have not reacted to the Muslim communalism, instead they have faced the rigors of Muslim dominance with the fervent hope that the thrust on the universal education and scientific progress in the state would pave way for the free flow of democratic thought. Recognition of human rights, the genuine urge and aspiration of Kashmiri Hindu minorities, religious tolerance, equity and justice. Some examples have to be put in here, so is the question. Of this paragraphs, but probably we might go through some specific examples. This hope is not shattered, neither his Muslim brethren in Kashmir nor the Indian government, which swears by secularism, came to the rescue of Kashmiri Hindus at the time when they were being butchered and hounded out of their homes and hearts. So probably, and hounded, you should have bounded, you should hounded at this. Hounded out of their homes and hearts. Nor at this moment when they have been uprooted and thrown out into wilderness to face a life and death struggle for survival. All the constitutional guarantees for the protection of their limb, life, property, their status and dignity have been trampled with impunity. The Hindus of Kashmir, wherever they are, therefore, univocally declare that with their deep and firm commitment to social unity, religious coexistence, democracy and secularism, they will not accept a society which is communalistic, obscurantist, intolerant and medieval. They will not submit to any authority in the state that does not recognize their right of life, equality, property, right to life, equality, faith and protection against discrimination. They will not be a party to the present struggle launched against secular and democratic India. With a history of having lived and died for freedom and their open espousal of the cause of tolerance, peace, amity and brotherhood between various ethnic, social, religious groups, they cannot accept the preeminence and predominance of any single religious community at their cost. Having been the original inhabitants of Kashmir from the ancient times and being the inheritors of glorious cultural tradition of more than 5,000 years, Kashmiri Pandits have much right to live in Kashmir as any other religious group. Preservation of this community in its natural and historic habitat is a political necessity. This is a very, very important point, probably. I'm not sure why homeland will sense in the questions. The present crusade by the terrorists against the Kashmiri Pandits to drive, the probably crusade, whether it's the right word or not, to drive away the last remnants of this proud community from its rightful place is a shame for the secular India in particular and the world community in general. And any measure taken to replicate this community outside Kashmir Valley will only result in the dispersal of this community, leading to its dissolution and extinction. This will be a tragedy, as the only remnant of a small but distinct race with an outstanding culture will be destroyed. Because of their equal rights on the land of their birth, they shake their claim to be an equal party to any future deliberations in the process of normalization and ultimate solution of Kashmir problem. The Kashmiri Hindus therefore demand the establishment of separate homeland for Kashmiri Hindus in the Kashmir Valley, comprising the regions of the valley to the east and north of River Jhelum. That the Constitution of India be made applicable in letter and spirit in this homeland in order to ensure right to life, liberty, freedom of expression, faith, equality and rule of law. that their homeland be placed under central administration with a union territory status till it evolves, very important, till it evolves its economic and political infrastructure. That all 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, which include those who have been driven out of Kashmir in the past and yearn to return to their homeland, and those who are forced to live on account of terrorist violence in Kashmir, be settled in the homeland on equitable basis with dignity and honor. Dated October, December, Kurushat, Aknamat, Station, Jammu, Tawi.
Even some point very quick emphasis करें. Even some
Last 4 points.
very important points. Therefore,
The last 4 points.
very important. थोड़ा और emphasis होना चाहिए.
The Kashmiri Hindus therefore demand the establishment of a separate homeland for Kashmiri Hindus in the Kashmir Valley, comprising the regions of the valley to the east and north of River Jhelum. That the Constitution of India be made applicable in letter and spirit in this homeland in order to ensure right to life, liberty, freedom of expression, faith, equality and rule of law. That the homeland be placed under central administration with a union territory status till it evolves its own economic and political infrastructure.
What does it mean?
The first one is not deliberate. That all 7 lakh Kashmiri Pandits, which include those who have been driven out of Kashmir in the past, yearn to return to their homeland, and those who are forced to leave on account of terrorist violence in Kashmir, be settled in the homeland on equitable basis with dignity and honor.
This is very clear. This is very clear.
There's any doubt?
अच्छा
अच्छा है
अच्छा
Conclusion अच्छा है.
अच्छा आप थोड़ा contradiction.
Let's start.
Listen, one observation. We will not change spelling and typography errors in this. Because this is one document that unifies a political voice in the community. So it remains the way it is.
It remains the way it is.
Produce photocopy.
Point is not that we are going to change this.
No, I'm just
Point
we
is
understand. Yeah, that's
जो
right.
bounded चीज mistake was there. Bounded बोलते हैं
No, it's actually the legal way here. Just separate the photocopy.
Sworn Bible.
No, but
I don't change it.
We don't have to change
The
it.
मरा नस्ल सवाल
All its errors and
मरान से अपने मरान आपको काम डलते
we don't have to.
Before we take some question and answers, after Thampu, I just briefly, 2 minutes I will take.
हैं. Somebody needs to note it.
You have to understand, under the circumstances, this document was drafted.
Circumstances, yeah.
Circumstances was drafted. Most probably, अगर यह मार्गदर्शन ये वुंकनस ड्राफ्ट का आता है शायद शेप डिफरेंट आता है लैंग्वेज डिफरेंट आत्मा आसन क्या postulates mass different but essentially the operative part should demand change as relevant they were in 1991 they were considered relevant thing we can say but yes I do agree that under the present context share the sufficient changes which we try to debate also which we try to at one point of time that we might most probably need to incorporate it but then subsequently we also thought that this document should not be tampered with. You should lose it. If there is something, we might produce another declaration, we might produce other documents.
So what are those? Do you want to mention those specific
We have
ones?
to
For
again,
example,
as I said,
for example.
for example, this document essentially lays the blame on our plight on Pakistan, which subsequently we don't. तम साथ ही इसने इस पाकिस्तान से असेंबली है साथ ही डॉट ये रेजोल्यूशन बने तम साथ ही इसने ऐसा पाकिस्तान से तुम शो कंप्रोमाइज तम साथ वो सुनता है कि पाकिस्तान से करिए because at that time people were of this opinion शो पता शायद वापस गसुन ऐसे सरकारी मुलाजिम ऐसे नन तोर ऐसे माफसम
ये सब बेक दोन जाएं गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया से ब्लेम कराएं
इन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया से हैकर उस ब्लेम करें एक्चुअली डायरेक्टली इंडिया
हां वो तो बात है
So there is no direct indictment of Kashmiri Muslims as such. Usually, but subsequently, it's not openly done. So at the time, it has to be understandable. So that's why we said
that we do in terms of narrative.
No, मगर विश्वास सर, we have blamed 3 parties here. Pakistan, Kashmiri Muslims and
correct.
That is there.
That is there.
Elaboration should put the narration instances specifications.
But it's an operative part. That operative part, I think, is relevant and it will remain relevant till we get this thing. Now there are a couple of
Questions, yes.
which you can.
Plus examples which we can.
The secularization of various communal movements which rocked the state in the aftermath of growth of Muslims.
Line number.
The first page of the last paragraph.
One will be.
Last paragraph, first page.
Last paragraph and the first page.
First page, last.
Kashmir इंसान शेख उबला I think Kashmir was इंसान शेख उबला का movement शुरू हुआ self movement
1930s.
1938 32, 33 something so the emergence of Sheikh Ubla against the rule of Dogras. He made this essentially this movement started as a communal movement between the Kashmiri Muslims and the Hindu Dogra king. That was the movement, and this movement was known as a Muslim conference. It was not a national conference. After subsequently the intervention of Kashmiri Pandits like Jala, Kalam, Premnath, Bazaz, Kamtan, Yamojan are secular touch. Kashabandhu and all those people, Yamojan gave secular touch to Kani Dobo Kichhan Muslim versus Dogra. Don't make it is Kashmiri versus autocracy. Feudal versus feudal autocracy. So they secularized the movement. Using essentially Muslim versus Dogra was Yamukursa, Kashmiri versus Yamukursa converted into political fight between suppressed people and the autocracy. So that was, and it was accepted because then subsequently Paro this Sheikh Ubla did.
Actually, in this context, only whenever we talk about Kashmir, we don't have to forget what was happening that time in
Rest of the world.
Rest of the country. Because I should get a question of but I had an opportunity to know some intellectuals within the community. In terms of but subtle I call about politically progressive classes and so on. Tim should munit under yeki ichunu munit coming up. So that's very important. Using reference that sentiment still survives within the community, within certain segment. Yash tim pa ek kosan tim chen broka mana. Tim hakan na ऐसे openly मिले ना hakan timan se इंदुन कैसे नाम में Kashmir के नाम पे चुनाव में करा. Then they are in a very dilemma. So I have been having some discourses with them here. ये dilemma जो खत्म करूँ क्या है timan क्या है dilemma? Timan वो तो Kashmir में जब वक्त source movement चला, so the most progressive movement was there वक्त चला. But they do not connect it. So Kashmiri national Premnath Bazar's mindset is almost timan Kashmir's isolation movement. Although they got all the inspiration from rest of India. So inspiration was important India's of course, left communism was
left communism and all that.
Mother was via Delhi. The Suchur Nazari was found. If the Muslim conference so active, when you to the Timon was import elegant behavior. I mean, ideology basis was Sir Sayyid Ahmad that we don't have to do. इसलिए यहाँ तक इस अनुबंध बात करा सो वैसे हमेशा याद हो मन कश्मीर was not in isolation. ना तो कसान है certain movements है कोई शब्द Arthropathy association. It was not. It was not. Had there been no partition, the Kashmir possibly would have just another issue like Northeast. It's ambiguity. Northeast much ambiguity. They have no historical or legal basis for separation. Same thing would happen there. It should always keep in mind the contemporary of that time, the time of the circumstances. But for the partition, Kashmir would have ceased to exist as a problem.
Can I ask a question on
So
that?
I think but also that's very important. That's very important. It was in that
counter question the same thesis. Some people assume between 1930 and 1947 that Muslim conference or whatsoever national conference, they use Kashmiri Pandits as a facade to further their agenda. Because Kashmiri Pandits, as we were there, democratic people, communist progressive bent of minds, use Pandit.
So you have always what the hindsight man have to analyze Sheikh Ubla first use because ultimately क्या ultimately the survey कि Tamiso is one personal aspiration. Tamiso is one ambition. So we could, as historical analysis, could be targeted on Sheikh Ubla.
Mr. Basan, you should share the argument petered down the CQ that eventually Sheikh Ubla was to India. Eventually could not have accession to India. So he could not have used but अगर ये क्वेश्चन बाटस पंचायत से इस्तेमाल करूँ तो क्या क्वेश्चन बाटस इस्तेमाल जो तेरे में originally intent was जो तेरे में क्या regret के rule life में कि बगुस सा independent king negotiate with the money.
Share one.
So he did not succeed here. The fact is that because of the Hindu Pandit intervention, Muslim conference became national conference. The fact is that because of, most probably because of that intervention, apart from Jana Mira kya galti kare teme se such baat nahi hai, then kya बोलो but the fact remains that maybe because of the Kashmiri Pandit influence, Sheikh Abdullah did agree to accede to India. He signed the papers of accession to India. He became the first sugar there. So he could not have used it. You can get the counter could be that it was to the credit of Kashmiri Pandits.
They use Sheikh.
That they use Sheikh Abdullah, you go to Hindustan. Sure. But that's a company you must subject to
Ultimately,
that is what it was. That's not the initial vapasun. कि user anytime team ना पड़े, we use it.
but ultimately,
I have a point here.
end result क्या होगा? End result क्या होगा? Today, if it's a Kashmir is an issue, it's by virtue of Sheikh Abdullah.
No,
Then
no, it is by Nehru.
क्या है ये?
It is by virtue of Nehru. I'll tell you what. It was.
Guys, maybe let's go more or less this topic.
I'm sure everyone asked.
These are important points. what we are saying is
I will not let you go further.
And Bano, Sheikh Abdullah, and Bano, Nehru and Bano, Sheikh Abdullah relevant. Yam Sadar Maharaj Emuswana, Bahat Yamur, Hindustan se. You should have one three Hindustan se, I'll say Sheikh Abdullah is not the Dimna, Hindustan is because it was a folly of Nehru. I said, but our curl Panun Kashmir. You know, what we Nehru at stage Hindustan. Who choose the man who doesn't tell you about Hindustan? There is Sheikh Abdullah. Otherwise, what was the Sheikh Abdullah standing inside on being the party to the instrument taxation? Hindustan is cut or the sponsor Riaz was cut as well, each year presidents.
to secularize the accession.
What? Yeah, what is secularization? So, ये गए पाले secularize.
ऐसा उसने जुनागढ़ में है भाई.
समाज आठ चीज कि अगर ये अनुसोस Sheikh Abdullah was logical successor to the king. He was a logical. You cannot deny that. Magar, एमसन जो logic institutionalized करण, the constitutionalized करण.
They say Maulvi Yusuf Shah was more powerful than Sheikh Abdullah.
No, but अगर हिसाब से गुजर constituencies ये Sheikh Abdullah से.
Sheikh Bakr क्यों?
Okay.
Yeah, you know, these things are very relevant. We all need to talk about it because what we are talking now, we also face similar queries, similar question outside. So where do we mentally open?
Mentally open for it.
But never forget that this is what all we speak has to be the backdrop of our own political agenda.
Exactly.
So we have to be very, very careful and how we can link it with it is important. So these discourses are very relevant to the issue.
You asked this question last time. Once the can किसको mark करते हैं those questions with him then?
आपको जो है नहीं जो नहीं
You also
population ratio उसको लेकर
हाँ इशू क्या इसके बड़ा इशू है हम मेंशन करना
सबसे पहले पेज पे से लास्ट में
population paragraph in one sentence क्या उसकी query is very relevant because political connotations. Just one sentence continue being but you go to describe it.
Organization of various communal movements. Kashmir was again a social popular uprising which was essentially Muslim in nature. In 1930s, with the advent of Sheikh Abdullah, and essentially a Muslim movement against the Maharaja became a people's movement against the autocracy because of Kashmiri Pandits. Glorious example is that because of the Kashmiri Pandits, the movement which was known as Muslim Conference got converted into
national front.
So that is how we say that we should be secularized.
But only इसमें आप सवाल के how it is because of only Kashmiri Pandits के national Muslim conference के national conference.
That part is the must.
But it is category साथ में तात्मश मान नहीं हुआ कि के मुसलमान in the noise progressive.
it is
Most
more of a
progressive, they also-
it is more of a consolidated effort कि Muslim conference became national.
No, it was not.
No, it didn't get converted. It got divided, and Yusuf Shah went to.
My point is, was it only because of Kashmiri?
No, of course not. No, I don't think that.
No. You have to read the history in the correct perspective. Almost liberal culture was never put there. I'm not with it. The usual idea Kashmir was possible. There were two streams of political movements going on. After Muslim conference. The Muslim conference is a circularized message into national conference because they have beyond streams which are reading room party.
क्या point is reading room party.
No, in fact, the Sheikh was part of that.
उसने शुरू हुई थी शुरू तो रीडिंग रूम पार्टी मगर तुम मुझे चार लोग था रीडिंग रूम पार्टी में चार till national conference became an overwhelming this thing Yusuf Shah sold Pakistan national conference got merged as the main voice the reading room party very different this
Reading group, I think reading room. As far as our question, I think, let's imagine we are in 1931 today. Let's imagine. We are living in 1930s. Let's imagine some of us are Kashabandhus and some of us are
Premnad brothers.
Premnad and others. So we are governed by a Hindu king. Those who govern Rajaship, we are governed by, we all are in good posts. Muslim peasants. By virtue of that, I have paid money and I have earned those jagirs and all that. It's not that just because I was Hindu. Just imagine that I have option mumkin hai. I get when the ground was muske uprising. I'm sure because one was music conference was said to be it. How could just conference chana as kya percent or shaken to facade as kya percent. We have same options. Let's imagine we are in 1931 or 38 to be precise. And this agar ismo Panun band of mine na Hindu is a Hindu band of mine. We will support Maharaja. Come what may if you Hindu king if you Hindu. We will take a religious, but we will take another line. Other line which is actually more logical, more open, and which is democratic in nature. The progressive line man there. That's a new religious discourse that way. As a concept, we will try to Musliman samjhao कि जिसमें से हम के वाचु गलत आप में उसको साशु गलत इमाम बढ़ गए तो US ने second वाला में from Muslim to national conference. It's 1938. तो it was contrast to 1990 या उनके लोग time. As much as this what I say sir, I'm not comparing or I'm not debating the issue. There's also can't compare. Argument ये मान 1930s में बातचीत मुसलमान से खड़ा बनो national conference. 1990s में जो same comparison. The मुसलमान का बे uprising, बातचीत में लाइन में साथ दिवान किए. क्या है बातचीत बे ही मना. जो पाना समझा बुशुस कशबंदो या बासा चुस्के प्रेमनाथ बजाज ग्रो अपना मान. I'm just doing a comparison. But now we have to prove to them that you are not Premnad Basas of 1930s, you are not Kashabandhu of 1930s, because in 1930s, this movement it was not against Kashmiri Hindus, or it was not against Kashmiri minorities, it was against Raj of that era, whether it was British Raj, it was Dogra Raj, it was against autocracy. It was a feudal nature of government against which we all stood together. But in 1990s, it was not a feudal structure, it was a democratic India against whom people started an uprising on religious basis. That's why Kashmiri Pandits did not collaborate with you in 1990.
Yeah, I think.
Can you summarize like that?
We cannot summarize that. I think conversations. Muslim conference, किस के बनी national conference, तब साथ क्या compulsions us, purpose. I will not say compulsions, some have can reasoning to us. Because I would advise a kitab as a side Nepali. It's a very small book. Kashmiri Pandit by Jalal Kemal.
Jalal Kemal's camera started and did life in the
He was Mijaj.
When did he
I think he passed away in 80s.
It is history of Kashmiri Pandits.
Kashmiri Pandit.
And it has been refaced by
There are some present context of solution is शायद किसी चीज़ तक मुझसे agree करना.
Okay.
But then it gives you good knowledge. कि तब साथ क्या सोच कशो बट तिथकन ये कहीं जो तब साथ सोच.
So, जिया क्या हो?
Yeah, you appreciate that. That one. So what is the essential difference between 1931 and 1999? 1931 was a communal movement against Maharaja. It was not on the people's movement against Maharaja. अगर कोई बात करियो exclude
करो.
अगर essentially वो चुते ये मुसलमानों का movement.
That context of second. He was the Argent provocateur movement kadar. He was not a Kashmiri.
He was an Afghan.
He was a Punjabi. Abdul Qadir was and on ironically he was an Ahmadiyya. So was Cook, British resident, and also Cook. And the history also is there is a school of thinking that was also planted. That was planted there because I see Kashmir not in isolation ever. It was part of a great game. It was a part game. It continues to be so. Because because of Soviet expansion, communist expansion, अंग्रेजों ने उसे दुरान टाइम का संभालना मुश्किल संभाले. तब पर पूरा कितनी control. मगर ये Kashmir was a free passage. ये पर हिंदुस्तान पे communist से कैसा Russia. They would go by Kashmir on. The aerial distance between Srinagar and the last post of Soviet Empire was Dushanbe. It's 800 kilometers. ये Soviet was ना Indo-Soviet communication system को मत. तो आग station और सिलर में तो पर्वत माउंटेन है. यहाँ station was Dushanbe. It was the closest aerial distance. ये सब तेरी वाहन corridor में तरह पे वापस जाना. So it was Angrez were also interested in it. There were expeditions in Ladakh happening in those areas. Askardo वगैरह. ये मैं ये पूछा कि कैसे था वो केस Russian Empire कैसे था कोई Communist Empire कैसे रुका हो. ये कभी रुझान चाहिए. Şu defa yos kasan Magdum sab her kasan. Kalan yos lur her kasan. İman heran payos 28 pois munaran. तो इमन मुसलमानों लोकलन लेखसार. इमन सारे खसान वसान आसान इबादत कराने वाला कुछ ना. To motivate them, to provoke them. To show dangal, to show are you pigs? Are you bearing with this kind of oppression and discrimination and exploitation? Yos iman her payment dand her karan iman lur diwan karan. That's how the whole movement in Marathi was communal. It was be communal. They were mobilized in the name of Islam.
Exactly.
So what I'm saying, actually practical you have to understand that Kashmir was as well martyrs day distortion क्या martyrs day चुकी और Maharajas against us गए rally थे तक ऐसा our force use करके बताना नहीं point is that one of the facts which is being suppressed. अगर ये Maharajas against us movement, which it was, essentially it was at that time. अगर नहीं ये तब साथ ये communal movement was, then क्या जाए इतना protest उस दौरान बाटमार.
How many were killed around?
That I don't know exact numbers. That
There was a large scale route also.
There was a large scale fire against Muslim, but
So it was not only against Dogras.
it was not essentially. It was essentially against the Maharaja. But since it was a communal movement, that's Muslim.
Even progressive question time of thing, teens, progeny, it was still, but how they what is that example you want any humus victim banala they give they do not agree with this notion what
they do not accept
they will not because they think it was their movement. It was progressive movement, it was against oppression and all that.
So,
but they are wrong in that.
What is the essential difference between 1990 and 1931? That is most essential difference. That despite that movement being communal, Kashmiri Pandits of that time, people like Ashok Bandhu, Kellam, Bazar, all those who were at the helm of affairs at that time in the Kashmiri Pandits, they still entertain and rightly entertain this hope that this is something which can be controlled. This can be molded and secularism can be established. The Yimna Niyara Hindustan never came part of
India.
And which was correct because they remained part.
And they made it.
They made it. Now the difference, what is the difference between 1990s was the situation using 1931 as Muslims. 1931 was against Maharaja, a communal movement against Maharaja. 90s was a communal movement against government of India, nation of India. Essential difference being in 1931, during that period, Kashmiri Pandits realized that we still have a chance. In 1990, we realized they could not have a chance. Now there is absolutely no
Because
chance.
physical survival was a threat.
It was physical survival. That means there was no shareholder with whom you could argue.
There are lots of shareholders.
Which is physical threat.
Physical threat. So that is that. But in both the cases, it was a colonial movement. It was never a secular movement. 1931 47 was called secularized butter. 1990s most probably they learned their lessons. They went from the 90s was scope. Secularized
J.K. was secular. Abdullah Spet, it's another movement, another gauges, the boycott since was going. You partner as a subject of the Diriva. That was very patronizing, condescending, and it was humiliating. Because their movement, whatever it was, Jammu Kashmir, it was Hungary Spet and Lafaz Tajaka, acronym, but it was fundamentally communal.
1989 का पापड़ किया सकते हैं मतलब सब को पहले first 4 lines में summarize करो 1989 में मरा चे May, June या July around spring time I remember the spring 6 class the at school technologies में that at school sang church and craft शिविर शास्त्र रुकु तो actually मुसलमान शुरू से punching bag mentioned as Superman उसका दिला मतलब 88 probably. The is a Superman saying that मुझे सुकुसु शेयर है I didn't know this name.
Well, you know.
खुदा अपने करियर में तुम तो एरो
You landed over.
मिलते सारा आदमी चुप बुढ़ा पाशों पे.
Take care, God bless you.
तुम्हें सरप्राइज I was so innocent I believed it.
Yes, I'm with me.
बाज घर शाम में बोलो फार्म पे की वो उसमें तो खुदा अपने करियर में वो बाज तो मुझे बुढ़े छात्र पे. मतलब इससे फैक्ट मतलब बच्चों को कातर पसंद है दूसरा खादो सुनो तो दाढ़ी से निकल वैसे तो काम वाली खिड़की में दाढ़ी से निकल अगर कोशिश करा हिंदी बस खादो सुनो तो दाढ़ी से निकल बस जो उनको क्या दिया बस मुझे पता है शिविर से के पास खुदावंदी करीम का फैरन है मिटा वो में फैरन में लगा तो वक्त बता अपोर बिस्पे ये मार्च से वापस वापस टाइगर से बाहर मारा के बोल के अच्छी बोल के सोना पैटर्न. So anyway,
that's a mention. Anything? Any other?
Any other question?
Also in this context, usually you claim chase karam, but secularization of it, it still is. We are essentially secular. You expect the credit. Even half the month, executive can receive. We receive them wholeheartedly in our camps.
Okay, now please.
No, that's
station.
Listen, it's very important. When you go out as an activist, you have to ensure that you don't look like a Trishul-dari, Bunduk-dari, extremist. So we do not hate Kashmiri Muslims. We have genuine complaints against them. But we hate those who were the perpetrators of crime. But we shouldn't be looking like, even now we are not. But those of us, usually there is no chikara, but chikara kushi dilute karna chahiye aisi gao. They are our worst enemies than the So receive them, love them if you wish to, have personal relations you have to have them, but don't let them get away with the guilt they should always carry on their mind. That they were responsible for exodus, even if they did not participate, they did nothing to save us, generally. But there have been individual cases, the Muslims ki madad kar rahe. Even
one more question, probably because we're running out of time.
Okay. That their homeland be placed under central administration with a union territory status till it is evolved and its
Economic and political infrastructure will develop. Point number 3.
Essentially,
what does it mean till this exactly?
There are two provisions of Indian actually direct union territory, and the next logical step is to attain a full statehood. So this is till it achieves the capability to become a full-fledged integrated political separate political entity as an Indian state. It's called permanence.
Revenue generating.
Do you think we are sure about that we can be self?
Yes. My customer is here. Okay, fine. We may not. This comes to you.
Do we have some constitutional provisions of having a union territory
for the demand of, because we being the aborigines of the valley, or because our demand being that we have been shunted out.
You should one of the constitutional that nothing in Indian constitution debars from creating unitary states. Uttar Pradesh is very busy, Madhya Pradesh Bihar is very Madhya Pradesh is very already Bombay presidency bani tre, Punjab bani is so there is constitutionally there is no bar. There is no bar. In the Indian constitution, a state needs to pass a resolution. कि मैं कलेक्टर जिस सूरत से जिसता है, मैं कलेक्टर प्राइस
State Assembly.
and whatever state under with the concurrence of central government is concerned. So constitutionally there is no debate. Yes, there will be a question. You said Karaj 7. You said
Sorry, I don't know Article 370.
no, Article 370.
So why as you said, the state can implement this.
No. Article 370 is must that government follow
The organization of state is part
They can do it.
But Article 370 is a temporary provision.
That was question. That was question. You should.
Let's not go to that. Let's first finish this.
Constitutionally, क्या ये possible is so that is not the question. Constitutionally, it is possible. आज जो बदल आक ये argument की बात हो रही है. User ने मुसलमान देवांश. User ने कहाँ देवांश? User unfortunately आलोक का मतलब. I was surprised. You should not have included him on this paper.
And deliberated.
No, you should not energy is gasan based. Actually, the whole body tells you that पानी जिंदगी में ऐसे वजन में वो तो tells you debate करना. So you cannot.
Within 1 month, they have to okay the draft. So again, these are deliberations.
Point should be that though here's a logical point. He says that Panun Kashmir is also possible constitutionally because we are asking for a state on a religious basis. Because India is still linguistic basis of states within divide. In the reorganization of Indian countries, states bani first states were created on the linguistic basis. That's why Punjab and Haryana, Punjabi, Hindi. Bihar, Bengal got divided into Bihar and this Hindi, catches of Maithili and Bengal. Bombay presidency divided into 3. Gujarat for Gujaratis, Maratha for Maharashtris, Kannada for Karnataka, Kannada for 3. So to that basis, yes, that is something which we need to address. Religious basis का चुने चाहे constitution का नाम allow.
तात्कालिक क्षेत्र में वो इमन क्या होगा?
बड़े विषय that was true. Because of the country, you need to understand, because of the conditions, the 1990s was, Yamsat actually directly spell out it was a sawal yaman ki Musalman kya mara ke which is a genuine question. I think this based on which we may not spell out openly now, but subsequently most probably we will have to spell it out. And most probably time will come and we will have to spell it out. When we might have to say that Panun Kashmir will also be for those Muslims who will.
That's what we say.
That's what we say. Who believe in Indian constitution, secularism, Indian ethos.
We say that.
Maybe we can change that because whatever.
Time has come because discourse never can change no more. You have a situation yesterday when those guys were being facilitated there, felicitated being there. I just saw activist was India Internet Center. She was addressing, I wouldn't like to name lady. She was addressing Natsiko. She was addressing archaeologists and historians who were gathered at India Internet Center. So was Timur Manan, scholars of history, are you aware what's being done to history of Kashmir, which is history of India? And they're from all across the country. But she received a call. She received a call from here. Hey, she was almost in tears. So therefore, we need to. This time has come. When there will be questions asked. There will be questions asked. Why is this relevant that we are fighting for? As activists, we have to have real conviction about it. This demand has come. Yes, one more thing. Under Panas Manthi Shasanasman ke Akad Bharat vision, this is possible, this has come, why? Why this demand has come? Because of the situation we are in. Ethnically, genocide, jo bhi, sorry, when I say Mangan, you don't have to define it around, kya manga. Takman kardeşim yapması ilgili button kalır. Yapması şöyle ilgili button kalır. This is who all believe in secular ideals of India. We have to swear by Indian constitution.
Yes.
Secular constitution of India. As a party, as stakeholders, landholders, कुछ garage में division का सारा किस बोइचो आप इसमें ला, किस बोइचो इसमें ला, जो इस तरीके का that's clearly defined. So we have a right on the property, and all those who believe in the secular creations of India are welcome to come here. ताच्छ question मना यूँ जैसे ऐसे detractors, political detractors, खासकर those parties, I would like to name the parties, those parties who have been supporting our cause, if they haven't gone out of it to support us, but yet the वादन चिया पचे ऐसे चीज़ and if you will allow me to make, because I am one of those who want Panun Kashmir voice to be coming together, and that's why I said this is a sacred document for me.
Yes.
I will tell you, there are rumors, there are in fact words said about those parties, the responsibility Panun Kashmir must divide on personality basis. That's also a fact. Tim kya shimara? तुम्हारे तो ऐसे minority में कहीं दो हुई है, ये लिए Panun Kashmir बने, तो ताकना से कुछ उत्तर minority में मुझे इस वाला के सारी secular rules है, ताकि तो मुसलमान हैं, you can't avoid that. तो ये लोग जो दिल्ली के minority में what have you achieved? But they forget the basic thing which I want you to talk about. Please discuss this. Which is one of them. When I say secular free flow of Indian Constitution, that means there is no Article 370. Right? We just get the button to Hindustan is yata thesis matter to up z pass the modern method. We are everywhere minority. We are minuscule minority. There is not a single instant that we can complain that we were harassed. Do you feel any harassment here? We are a linguistic minority. We are a cultural minority. We are a religious minority. We may not be a religious minority in most of the area, but we definitely are a linguistic minority in most of the places. So we do not have any complaints against that. So let there be Article 370 removed there. अगर एक अखंड भारत जो हमारे लोग कहते हैं जिनकी डिमांड है, I think this we will not give up. अगर तिमन चुप आसान की है कि सब let them remove Article 370 for whole of Jammu and Kashmir, then it will be the same situation. But this is not my. This is as an activist you have to understand. You don't have to talk about. As an activist, you have to know about.
You talk about dimension.
I'll just give one just issues. As a Panun Kashmir, we will not say this thing is Panun internal consumption. Much of the theoretically, otherly situation arises as issue. Then you have to go by the history. You have to go by the history of not only Kashmir, you have to go by the history of Islam. अगर कोई कश्मीर में theoretically ये situation create करें तो वो Panun Kashmir में ऐलान within the free flow of Indian Constitution. ऐसा जो तो इदामान कश्मीर मुसलमानों यह जन बात इस हाउस में believe छू what's it? You will not find those Muslims who don't particular consider. ये जन बात इस हाउस में believe.
That's not accomplished.
I just want to reply Muslim boza. That's
Shannon Pet ki hai, which I am asking something
I was knowing you.
Because of legal perspective,
Your answer is very well taken for that. Let them remove Article 370.
That is one maqsad है ना पूरा. But we will not say that. We will not. My agenda is this. My agenda is this. This is my. And that will not happen. That will not happen.
So much flexi. I'm not really going to be draft because that much this process was where all is there.
because we're just
They were in a hurry. Were in a hurry.
No, I'm not really. This was we've added program pointer. As per 1990 Maras was MARGDHARSHAN. Probably at that time we didn't conceive what's coming in 1993, 98.
ये चाय का मिला था भैया.
1993 years में amendment का सान.
चाय.
Let's focus on something very important because but that chai will anyway have to do with. Malak, please receive.
David Singh.
ये बता दें कि वो शो
Please, okay. 1993. Please. 1993. After rights of protection of human rights actually section 2D introduced in United Nations. 1991 से मुझे मार्गदर्शन बनाऊंगा. We didn't know something of this thought will happen. It's around the same time when Bosnia started. Bosnia Herzegovina crisis गई, तो United Nations को मजबूर था इस amendment करने के लिए. Because they had to pay way for separate state of Bosnia, Slovakia वगैरह को करने separate terrorism. So what they did at that time, section 2D as मुझको रिमूव आक 9 point add. ताकि मुझे 3 point आ यह मुझे बनाना चाहिए. अगर सर कोई ethnic minority political participation male, any ethnic minority political participation male, and it violates their social, cultural, economic rights, they are liable. It's a liability of the government at that time to give them separate political representation. After various clauses can change representation. It's hekwa at any point of time. It was in 1993 as much one. Touch further 1998 with Bay Amendment. And 19 countries, 90 countries, including India, ratifies it in the International Council on Human Rights that will adhere by this section 2D. Under section 2D, the government of India should ratify that we will give the political representation. Political representation is geopolitical in the sense to any ethnic.
Geopolitical.
It's only political.
That's important.
Section 2D, point number 3, government of India ratified among other 90 countries in 1998. So am I entitled for political representation in what sense?
No, we are cases demanding that, no?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you have to read one more clause in that. In a minority unit, a minimum percentage of minority should be there. It is not like that. I have read this clause. Please read it clearly. We have maybe it is a method. Agar last number there is a minimum minority presence is required. It is not if there is 1 lakh people for public and you have only 1,000.
They could be
1,000 people, so you will get the most tax. No, it has a minimum percentage of requirement.
But
The clause is a wonderful clause, but it doesn't imply. But just read out.
India is
Within India and all countries.
That's okay. But then
Find out before putting this. Find out this.
You get to study मगर आक्षेप से ताकत से political representation means you say क्या चुनाव political empowerment. If you have one minister there, doesn't change my destiny.
This is destiny, exactly.
Doesn't change my destiny. We always had a minister in Kashmiri, but the minister was always there. So it should remain by exodus.
But option empowerment is a separate word. Representation is a separate word.
Empowerment is a bit switch.
If I am going to pick and choose which government of the prime minister of India, I do not represent at that time all the 6 of India. Does he represent all the 6? I said he is not representing.
No, not at all. You see, Kashmir in this context is not that like the Banan Bagaya the minister.
He is not representing.
No. Government should sabotage. Board bar. You should sabotage. Subvert करना Employed टेबल्स तो बनाना मिनिस्टर को मैं क्या मोबाइल नहीं तो चुप ना पर चुप रोज़ा साफ सेक्शन में टेबल्स तो बनाना भी that's not that what I do फक्त बात आती है क्या ये भी यार just understand यार
How do you counter that?
We don't want that. We don't want that.
तब मुझे accept
Give me the legal points.
legal point you cannot do
there is one logic there. अगर suppose you want to बताया साहब is a minister, ना? अभी counter logic government तो ये वापस करना चाहिए कि अगर ये minister है, why you all people cast a vote? तो कैसे तो vote?
No, that's not relevant. That's not relevant. Vote do.
Has someone actually put his voted for Bakaya to be
No, that's not. No,
But how is it possible?
That's not relevant.
I'm not.
Well, it's usual. No, we participate in the electoral process or not. That's not relevant to this context.
It is so just before to complete. Which is one I can suppose Pagash Virji Gonguisha Minister of State, for example.
Science state.
He happens to be Kashmiri, all right. He happens to be Kashmiri, but it's all right. Once you see issue government for just mere tokenism for that sake only he is there. बस जो होना कि मतलब लेटर से कि चम within ourselves we say कि यार I mean he is not our representative. The issue we don't मतलब take him as our representative.
Okay.
Government stuff counter करा कि he is a Kashmiri Pandit and I have someone symbolic here. You want सवाल कि आप counter क्या है?
ऐसे सुमाचु beyond political agenda क्या है? No political issue. Yes, this may meet some of this may be agenda.
That's a devil's advocate we are asking.
No, no,
Devil's advocate was-
this will meet requirements or demands of some of our people. It's a fact, but not yours and mine, not Panun Kashmir. We don't represent. It's an election situation.
Any Kashmiri Pandit, if he has to work with them, that means he is accepting their ideology. What is whether it is a Kashmiri Pandit, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, or just government. That is
more of
not
ideology.
You talk about nation conference, when you talk about PDP, for example,
Yeah, that's a
main
ideology.
parties,
We know what is their ideology.
This you have a very legitimate thing.
That's what
I am
I'm saying.
here because I swore my Indianness, right? I am not ready to compromise on my Indianness. Well, one minute. PDP wants greater autonomy. Now I have to ask me if I have to lead in their politics, right? It's what Sheikh Abdullah today, for the statement, is emerging to be a avatar, I don't know, is aiming to be a prime minister of India. So, no, he may be a prime minister. I won't be surprised. President should sure. But I will be surprised if by chance, by default, he turns out to become a prime
He
minister.
told me this in front of me.
I know. No, this is important. So important is when you have a representative, minister, how do we react to that? I do not come anywhere closer to their autonomy. I don't come anywhere closer to PDP self-rule. Therefore, anybody claiming to be representing me, being there, he cannot be my representative.
It's not my.
And Congress has been in the since 1990 has been always either with this group or with that group.
Sir, my question is, he can't be my representative. Am I saying this because I am a...
No, that does reverse.
Because I belong to a certain ideology, because I am...
No, not reverse. It doesn't change.
Or I am an ordinary...
Rajan, my demands are based on what? You read it, आपकी demand से किस paragraph में? मगर background से don't page पे. My demands are based on the background. How do you roll back the circumstances that led to my exodus?
Okay, now तो इधर मैं BHG में आते हैं. What was the idea of today's meeting कि USS मानो इच्छा ठीक
It's
करना.
a counter one is a role plays we are doing. Nothing more.
ये सब क्या बात है? Absolutely first class.
The my question is, we are doing role plays to make us.
Why not to concentrate on IDP?
Because I said, well, here we discuss करना. I said, कल ये पर discuss करना. One margin of role play में आप कौन ज़रूरत है? Probably. You will put a devil's advocate. Be seated. Be seated.
IDP, yes, that can be part of the agenda.
Yes,
So
we
let's
can
after role play. Last role play.
Okay, please.
तो दो ही बोल. आप role play ज़्यादा requirement आपने देखी बस पता बच्चे तुंदे all. This is the last role play. Actually तुंदा sets का ज़्यादा बातें बने हैं. ये सब मशीन तो पागलों से पेम गए यार. चुप गए थे पता है. मतलब role play let's imagine. It's 2020 years. 2020 years मंचे worst case scenarios मंचे 10,000 part के शेर में भी. Worst case scenarios वो माना. Worst case scenario ऐसे हम sideline as a homeland advisor. Has been sidelined 100%. तो अटमरा के लोगों के वो कुछ नफर खड़ा यूजर के pro government thesis पर पकांच. ना pro is a role play. Pro government thesis मतलब let's imagine the Alokama types of people have no.
Sir, तुम जो पक्का
He's not your enemy, he's not your adversary. Those who sit with us.
I'm saying let's imagine it's an imagination that I'm carving out. It's a role play. So there are 10,000 people in Kashmir. We have been sidelined, and now 10-12 people have taken the forefront and are proving to be pro-government ideology. That Buhan Mafran Chunkan Janadesh at this one, because they have not been proven by ballot. We have not cast a vote for them, so they are not by ballot my representatives. But they have been handpicked by government of India or J&K government. This is a scenario I am talking about. Just imagine about the scenario. Bush's ambition at the age of 50. My youngest Jimson asked me card rice me 3-5. So beyond that, which is as you can look into pi man advice. This is 2020 I am thinking about, or 2025 After cases much pala nafar desan pagajam plus statement yes we are okay for pre-53 status. Imagine that God forbid senior generation mara 6 man is available. Jimson man is guide kar rahe pre-53 कितने करबो with respect to MARGDHARSHAN so on with respect to 1990 1947 1930 sir in South Exodus citizen. What would be your argument? Imagine you are at that time representing homeland. Just try to argument I was over Sas Kunsus Mazan Mando Achu Bahna for that Achu Pur silent with no generation from Kudi. What is your argument to stop this 1953?
It's frightening.
No, he's not fighting you.
It's frightening. No, there is no honest fight. Far away.
Gentlemen, just watch this.
Listen. 2020 is far away. This situation could arise just this month.
Sanilji, no, I'm sorry for this. 2020 is far off. This situation was already there in 2010. Apex committee was on the government. Wasn't it the same process? But what happened to that?
In different right. Report. There are scholars, thinkers, in the opinion leader. Timchi Manan, Timchi Vishwas Karan. Interlocutor reports on hold only because of UP elections. UP election decision khatam. The interlocutors reports will be put on the table. Right? And this has a lot to do. Nobody is going to agree to it. You don't know whether you are following it up. Jilani is in town. And one of the visitors here was Shatrughan Sinha. Can you imagine? So, he's in town. The Muslim League has already left Hurriyat. That he's Hurriyat. And what is that? Dr. Anand's husband, Alam. Masar Alam. He has given a full statement against Sayyid Alisha Jilani. And Umar Farooq is trying to defend his position from here. That's why Juma was not Juma it was addressed to his audience there because they think Imam Shanawi No, it is worse now. Apex Court has done a job. It's done a job. Rato Governor, we were expecting he would make we were expecting he would make some announcement here. See, after the interlocutors report is given, yes, we need to talk about that seminar there is on the India Center was. Taji shows just 1 minute on that. So survey karna youth of Kashmir, so-called youth of Kashmir. So this was sponsored by Government of India. It was such an important survey that panelists were, the panel was headed by, the moderator was Umar Abdullah himself. And we tried to make a point that Sushil Pandit, me and Shibandullah to some extent, he also tried to be there. But this is all going in that direction. They are trying to cultivate public opinion. None of them is going to agree to that. That's why they are trying to. At least don't reject it. Don't reject it. That's what they want them to do.
Just ignore it.
It will be 100 steps ahead, and they will not agree to it. So we will be reversing our historical clock by at least 60 years. Now on that issue, the one they may make an announcement Prime Minister they may declare it at that moment of time, number one. Based on your triumph card, Minister you may have Bakaya become the minister. Or because that's also that's internal politics also happening.
Yes, but I think it's not the situation could be. But then there are certain things which point towards different things also. Recently, yes, cabinet, the intent is same, but then the outcome could be different. 30th January, Home Secretary had called it. Incidentally, we were also invited, but we chose that we could.
30th January, last couple of weeks back.
Home Secretary. Home Secretary had called me.
I replied to this big email.
We were also invited, but we did not wish that we will not go. So, but people like the president, this, these people. There is important thing that has happened in that meeting. First of all, Home Secretary has emphasized only one point. So I case would reject Prime Minister's rehabilitation package. You could do that. Good thing was that it was rejected by both. It's a very strong signal to the government that Pandits are not doing this. But there was another significant thing, which is more important. और इन कश्मीरी समाज ने करता बस भी यही ना ये डिमांड दोहरा सर 2-3 मिनिस्टर बना देना मेरे yes yes no they are sure they told
Yes.
they said it but what is more important is home secretary क्या क्या को इससे क्या होगा हमारा एक मिनिस्टर बनने से क्या होगा गवर्नमेंट को
Rethink your strategy.
मांगने में भी शर्म नहीं है।
और उसने जो अंतिम शब्द उनको दिए ना वो कहाँ पे लाख पढ़नी चाहिए वो लाख करके
बोलने में भी शर्म नहीं आई।
That I know. Good you did go.
Now when Puraji email broadcast, I replied to my, he said everybody on that. I said you.
When just argument points we go with
Roadside, highway,
I liked it. I talked to everybody about it. We have beggars.
You have beggars.
मगर अगर आप ये घेरस आप बच्चे में
हमारा को आप
ये जी काम है अगर वो इंफॉर्मेशन आना ये जो एसएमएस आम होता है विश्वास है निम्सात कन्विक्शन आसिक कन्विक्शन कुंती सूरत समझ रहा शासन लश्करों मजबूत शुहुल ताप उसवाना उसमें फेलिसिटेशन करेंगे नहीं क्या नशा they wanted to felicitate me for whatever little contribution I have done so I conveyed them that I cannot accept. So there are a lot of SMSs coming in between phone calls and हमारा कोई ये तो ये भी actually true ना I said no I will not accept this because I cannot accept felicitation on the phone with known anti-Batas, anti-Indians I felicitate them I will not accept that. So उन्होंने खेर सब कराने हैं शादी सब कराने हैं और others general secretary. So I got a call because मैंने जब थाना है कहाँ है आपसे in fact I conveyed. Now I got a just an SMS from Shali Saab, the General Secretary. I really miss you. I have great respect for you. I love you from my core of the heart. God bless you. Now I just wanted, I was just trying to understand कि क्या अंदरूनी गवाह से खुश की आस ने किया उस गलती और कुनिया में जो दारुद उसने कहा कि ऐसी करान चीज़ शायद गलती करा है
Last year after Shul Tabasman, I was there for 2 days. This time I'm not there. So the symposium was the decision that I should also speak. And when I got there, I said no politics here. This is a cultural event.
Okay, we will switch it off now.
Party was someone JK Arts Culture he was presiding. Yet the time Google, there was Kashmir Beji migrant, but also Kashmir Beji second migrant. I could not go from Srinagar to my own village because I was under trial. And then he also made a very relevant point. So you talk about missing Kashmir, Kashmiri Muslim has ceased to be Kashmiri. He is only a pan-Islamist now. Pakistan is somewhere, it's very conversion that change whole thing. So, yes.